Chosen one, there are places your soul refuses to stay, not because you're broken, not because you're paranoid, but because you're protected. And not by walls, not by doors, but by a divine firewall embedded into your spirit. A sacred code written before you ever took your first breath. Your discomfort is not dysfunction, it's discernment. Heaven-wired, hell-proof, spirit-tested. You've walked into rooms where the temperature dropped, but there was no AC. Where your heart pounded, but no one chased you. Where your skin crawled, and still nothing moved. But everything felt wrong. The laughter was hollow, the energy was off, the smiles were masks. That chosen one was not anxiety. That was atmosphere warfare. Your spirit picked up what your eyes couldn't see. Your presence collided with frequencies that were never meant to host you. Because some rooms were built by contracts you never signed. Some spaces echo with residue from rituals you never witnessed. And while others blend in, you combust. You were never called to fit. You were assigned to reveal. And revelation always creates resistance. See, the world says, go with the flow. But your flow is upstream, against the grain. Heaven-coded. Stay with me. This isn't just about physical places. It's spiritual portals, energetic traps. There are conversations you walk away from, parties you can't enjoy, jobs that looked good, but drained your spirit, relationships that glittered, but felt like cages. Why? Because your spirit won't let you build where God never told you to enter. You carry an alert system others can't explain. When it buzzes, it's not fear, it's divine protocol. When your stomach turns, that's not nerves, it's notification. When your mind says stay, but your spirit screams run, trust the scream. If you've ever felt the air grow heavy for no reason, comment 99. That wasn't emotion, that was interception. That was your spirit dodging a trap you didn't even see. And every like on this video, it's not just engagement, it's agreement. It tells the algorithm and the atmosphere, I know who I am. I'm coded different. I'm protected by something bigger. This is just the beginning. There are 9 places chosen ones never go, for a reason. Stay with me, chosen one. You don't just avoid certain places, you are repelled by them. Not by logic, not by fear, but by frequency. Because your soul is tuned to something heaven-coded. You've been marked, set apart, spiritually encrypted, and where others feel safe, you feel something, a weight, a warning, a whisper. Don't stay here. This is not paranoia. This is your built-in divine tech. Discernment is your firewall. Sensitivity is your radar. Your discomfort is a signal, an alert from the Holy Spirit. When the air gets heavy, when your skin tightens, when your spirit shifts without explanation, that's not emotion, that's divine intel. Stay with me. Let's talk about where you never go, because your spirit knows. 1, you don't go where contracts were signed without your consent. Some places carry invisible signatures, agreements made in silence, darkness, pain. You step in and something resists you. Why? Because the foundation isn't pure. The roots are cursed. Chosen one, you were born of covenant. You can't dwell in contamination. 2, you don't go where performance replaces presence. The lights are bright, the sound is loud, the smiles are plastic. But something inside you says, God's not in this. Because you don't move for applause, you move for anointing. You weren't called to be entertained. You were called to encounter. 3, you don't go where your spirit has to shrink to be accepted. The moment you feel the need to dim your light, mute your knowing, or explain your sensitivity, that's your cue to leave. Because your presence is not negotiable. Your calling isn't up for vote. 4, you don't go where silence is more dangerous than truth. Some environments punish honesty. Some relationships require secrecy. But chosen one, your voice is a weapon. And your silence is not compliance. It's warfare. When your spirit cannot speak, it starts to suffocate. That's when God tells you, exit. Shurei 5. You don't go where peace must be performed. Fake calm, pretend joy, masked chaos. You felt it before. Rooms where peace is painted on the walls, but panic lives in the air. And your body knows it before your mind does. That's not hypersensitivity. That's your mantle responding to the undercurrent. 6. You don't go where your discernment is mocked. You've been told you're overreacting, too much, too deep. But deep calls to deep, and your depth disturbs shallow water. You don't stay where your spirit is dismissed. 7. You don't go where honor is absent. You sense it in leadership, in partnerships, in rooms where people are used but not seen. You can feel dishonor in the tone, the posture, the air, and your soul cries out, "This is not holy." 8. You don't go where access costs your identity, fame, money, status. They look good, but they're traps in disguise if they make you forget who you are. Chosen one, your access is not worth your anointing. 109. And lastly, you don't go where God says no, even if it looks perfect, even if others thrive there. If your spirit says no, you obey. Because you weren't called to chase comfort. You were chosen to carry fire. Every time you walk away, you're not losing. You're aligning. You're breaking cycles your bloodline never escaped. You're protecting the portal your soul travels through. You're honoring the sacred contract written in heaven's ink. Comment 99 if you've ever had to walk out of a place that looked fine, but felt wrong. Let the world know you're not confused. You're coded. Every like, every share, every moment you pass this message on, it's not just digital, it's spiritual. You're pushing back darkness. You're confirming alignment. You're saying, I know who I am. I don't go where God's not present. This isn't fear, it's frequency management. And chosen one, this is just the beginning. The places you walk away from are proof of the power you're walking into. Stay tuned, stay armored, stay discerning. You are not here to fit in. You are here to disrupt. Chosen one, there's a reason your spirit starts trembling in certain rooms, even when everything looks divine. The music might be soft. The candles lit just right. People might be lifting hands, speaking holy words, but deep down, your spirit tightens. Because when something else is sitting on the throne, your spirit won't sit still. It doesn't matter how big the building is, how powerful the preacher sounds, how loud the crowd shouts. If the air has shifted, if the presence has left, if the altar became a stage, you feel it. You're not reacting to people, you're responding to a frequency. And your frequency is not calibrated to false gods, fake worship, or spiritual performances. Because idolatry doesn't always wear a crown. Sometimes it wears a microphone. Sometimes it's dressed in designer clothes and dripping with charisma. Sometimes it's a trending voice telling you what alignment is, when the whole platform is misaligned with heaven. And you feel the counterfeit in your bones. Not because you're judgmental, but because you're coded for truth. Your DNA doesn't bow to golden calves. No matter how modern or masked they look, you might walk into a space and everyone else is dancing, clapping, weeping. But you feel the absence. You feel the performance. You feel the thrones being offered to egos, not to God. That's not paranoia. That's discernment. That's your sacred system alerting you. This is not mine. Because chosen one, you don't worship vibes. You don't follow aesthetics. You don't drink from cups that shine but poison. You're wired to worship in spirit and in truth. And your spirit knows when truth left the building a long time ago. You carry a built-in detector. And when the frequency isn't heaven's, your soul refuses to participate. That unease, that tension in your chest, that subtle ache behind your ribs, that's the spirit whispering, leave. You weren't called to bow here. And you obey, even when it makes you look strange, even when you walk out alone. Because you were never built to blend in with Babylon. You were born to guard the throne. No throne but God's. Say it, declare it. If your spirit has ever rejected a holy room that didn't feel holy, comment "no throne but God's" right now. That comment isn't just text. It's testimony. It's spiritual resistance. It's drawing a line in the unseen. I don't worship systems. I serve the living God. Because for you, worship isn't a vibe. It's a vow. Stay with me, chosen one. We're just getting started. There are 8 more places you were never meant to go, and each one holds a spiritual reason you've been feeling out of place. Don't scroll. Don't skip. Because the next one, it's the place your soul has been running from in silence. Stay tuned. Stay grounded. And if this hits something deep, like this video as a signal to the algorithm that real worshipers are rising. Share this with someone who walks out of the crowd just to stand with God. Your discomfort isn't dysfunction, it's divine. You were never meant to sit where idols rule. You were always meant to burn where His presence falls. Amen, chosen one. There's a kind of noise your soul can't tolerate, not because you're weak, but because you're wired for a different realm. You've probably tried to blend in at least once. You dressed up, you smiled, you followed the music into dark rooms and glittering lights, thinking maybe this time it would feel different, but it never does. The beat drops, but your spirit doesn't. It rises, warning, wailing, whispering to you over the sound of synthetic euphoria. This isn't your frequency. Everyone else is lost in the rhythm, bodies moving, voices laughing, cups spilling. But you feel your soul shutting down. It's like watching the world go numb in slow motion, while you're the only one still awake. And let's be honest, it's not about the drinks, it's not about the dance floor, it's about the exchange. What's being traded in these places isn't just time, it's essence. Atmospheres built on escapism drain the spirit. Rooms filled with synthetic highs carry spiritual costs, and the chosen can feel it. Because for you, fun that makes your soul feel fragmented isn't fun, it's warfare. You can't turn off your discernment. You can't vibe with vibration that distorts truth. And you were never created to seek numbness as rest. Because freedom that costs your peace is spiritual slavery in disguise. Every time you walked into one of those rooms, your soul cried louder than the music. Not because you were judging, but because your inner compass was being overridden by noise that numbs. And even though your feet might have stayed a little longer, your spirit had already stepped out. It's not that you're too deep, it's that you're too called, too activated, too aware, too awake, to pretend like that fog machine is holy smoke, to act like those vibrations won't echo into your peace later, to dance like your angels didn't just leave the room, because every space holds a code, every sound wave carries a signature, and your spirit, it's encrypted for heaven's frequency. You don't escape into chaos, you return to stillness. Chosen one, if your soul has ever rebelled in places others call fun, comment, "I don't escape, I awaken." That comment isn't just a phrase, it's a portal. It's a declaration that you're done betraying your peace just to fit in someone else's party. You were never created for crowds that worship excess. You were called to host presence, not chase pleasure. You were designed to carry fire, not fake light. So yes, walk away. Leave mid-song. Say no when they say, just come for a little. Because that little will always cost too much. Your clarity, your energy, your covering. Let this be your reminder. Your discomfort is holy. Your boundaries are blessed. And your absence from the crowd is the presence of God pulling you back into alignment. Like this video as an act of spiritual warfare. A flag planted that says, "I choose awakening over anesthesia." Share it with someone who's been questioning why they never feel at home in loud rooms. This isn't rejection, it's redirection. And that hollow feeling you felt surrounded by sound, that was your soul remembering who it is. Stay with me, chosen one. We're only on number 2. The next place, it's where false comfort wears a crown and your spirit refuses to bow. Chosen one, you've always felt it. That weight in your chest the moment you step into certain buildings. Not from fear, but from misalignment. Because not all prisons have bars. Some hand you badges, some offer promotions, some smile at your face while starving your spirit behind spreadsheets and deadlines. You see, for most people, the job is just a job. But for you, it's a battlefield, not of tasks, but of truth. Because you don't just carry talent, you carry light. And when your light walks into systems built on manipulation, control, and spiritual compromise, there's a clash. They'll smile at your productivity, but flinch at your purity. They'll celebrate your results, but quietly resent your refusal to gossip, your refusal to bow, your refusal to fake the smile when your soul is screaming. You've sat at desks that felt like altars to false gods, sacrificing your time, your joy, your peace, for paychecks that felt more like chains. Ticking clocks, gray walls, meetings that drain more than they direct, and beneath it all, that whisper in your spirit. You weren't sent here to survive this. You were sent to discern it. There are workplaces that won't just break your back. They'll try to bend your blueprint, try to convince you that fitting in is more valuable than standing out, that being silent is safer than being sacred, that burnout is a badge of honor. But chosen one, you were never designed to worship routine. You were never meant to build someone else's empire at the expense of your own essence. God didn't wire your gifts to be exploited in cubicles void of calling. You are not just an employee. You're a vessel of discernment, of clarity, of heaven's pulse. And so when your spirit starts breaking down while your resume is climbing up, when your joy fades even as your income rises, you know, this isn't blessing. This is bondage in a business suit. And you walk away, sometimes quietly, sometimes trembling, but always in alignment. And if you've ever left a job that demanded your excellence but rejected your essence, comment purpose over paychecks. That's not just a comment. It's a prophetic declaration, a signal to the unseen that you choose assignment over approval. You choose peace over promotion. You choose heaven's call over human applause. And if you're still in that space, if you're listening from behind that desk, beneath those fluorescent lights, wondering if your misery is your mission, it's not. That dread you feel each morning, that's discernment in disguise. That's your destiny knocking, even as your email pings. You are not lazy. You are locked in the wrong room. And no matter how comfortable that chair is, if it costs your light, it's not worth it. Like this video if you've ever had to choose your spirit over your salary. Share it with someone who's questioning why their soul feels suffocated in a space that looks successful from the outside. This is spiritual warfare with spreadsheets. This is discernment dressed in business casual. And you, chosen one, are waking up to the truth that the real paycheck is alignment. Stay with me, because the next place you'll never go, it looks safe, but it silences your voice. Chosen one, you've walked into places that look perfectly fine on the outside. Spotless floors, pretty curtains, candlelit corners. But the moment your foot crossed the threshold, your spirit flinched. Because a clean home can still be spiritually contaminated. The air was thick, wasn't it? Not with dust, but with energy. Something unseen pressed against your chest. You couldn't explain it. You just knew. It was like the walls were still echoing arguments that happened years ago. Like the floorboards were hiding secrets, like something or someone never left. You smiled politely. Maybe you sat for a moment, but inside your soul was already packing. Because chosen one, your discernment doesn't need evidence. It just knows. That house could be beautiful. Sage burning, incense swirling, a cross on the wall, even a Bible on the table. But behind all that, frequencies don't lie. And some homes carry residue. Spiritual leftovers from trauma, betrayal, grief, unrepented rituals, or uninvited spirits. You weren't just picking up on the decor. You were picking up on the data buried beneath the paint. Because your spirit is built like a scanner. It reads frequencies like fingerprints. And when the frequency is off, when the atmosphere hums with unrest, sorrow, or dark influence, your whole being alerts. It's not anxiety, it's not overthinking. It's heaven's warning system, wired into your soul. And here's the part people don't always understand. Some houses feel haunted without a single ghost in sight. Because spiritual weight lingers. It drips from door frames. It whispers from attics. It embeds itself in the objects, in the energy, in the air. You could be sitting on a designer couch, sipping herbal tea, but if that room has been used for spiritual compromise, if that house has hosted cycles of rage, fear, manipulation, or silent sin, your spirit won't rest. You'll get the chills. You'll feel watched. You'll sleep but wake up more tired. You'll say, something's just off. And that's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's your gift of spiritual sonar, pinging through silence, exposing what others can't sense. Chosen one, if you've ever walked into a house that looked like heaven but felt like a trap, type "My spirit reads the frequency." That's not just a comment, that's a discernment ritual. You're telling the unseen, I don't just see with my eyes, I read with my soul. And if you've ever had to walk away from a place others were fine staying in, You're not dramatic. You're divinely protected because some rooms weren't built for your light. Some ceilings weren't high enough for your calling. Some energy fields would have drained your glow until nothing was left. So yes, leave quietly. Yes, decline the invite. Yes, trust the chill in your spine more than the smile on the host's face. Because you, chosen one, weren't made to dwell in density. You carry atmosphere-clearing authority. But even with that authority, you are not required to stay where God has not assigned you. Like this video as a spiritual signal. Your confirmation that you're not crazy, you're calibrated. Share it with someone who keeps ignoring the signs their spirit has been screaming about. And remember, your discernment is not a curse. It's a compass, a shield, a signature of the anointing you carry. Stay with me, because the next place, it's where charm masks chains, and your spirit can't be fooled. Chosen one, have you ever walked past a cemetery and felt a sudden stillness press against your skin? Not just silence, but something watching, something whispering just beyond the veil. The wind slows, the air thickens, your breath shortens, even though the sky is open. And you know, this place holds more than memories. It holds movement, because not all spirits rest in peace. Some linger, some roam, some recognize your light and want access. See, most people visit these places for closure. They bring flowers, say prayers, take photos. But your soul activates. Your frequency lights up the invisible realm like a flare. And the moment you come near that gate, something stirs. Because the dead aren't always quiet. Some are waiting, some are watching. And when your spirit burns bright, it becomes a beacon. Even in the graveyard, you felt it. The sudden chill, the shadow that moves when no one else does. The eerie pause in time, as if everything just held its breath. You weren't imagining it. That wasn't just emotion. That was energy, trying to reach through the crack between worlds. Cemeteries may be built for remembrance, but they are also portals, gateways where timelines blur, where grief, memory, and unclean spirits hover like fog. And your presence, it disrupts the stillness, it disturbs the dormant, because your light carries movement, and not everything wants to stay asleep. This is why you've never been able to stay long, why you linger in the car, why you stand near the edge instead of walking all the way in. Not out of fear, but because your spirit knows. Discernment doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply stops you, right at the threshold, and says, this space is not for dwelling, only for passing. And listen closely, because this matters. You are not just sensitive, you are guarded. Your light is protected by divine contracts. You don't owe your energy to every spirit that stirs. You don't have to open your heart just because something calls your name in the wind. So if you've ever felt a chilling presence in a cemetery, memorial, or graveyard, comment, my light is protected. That's not just a comment, it's a boundary marker in the spirit realm. A line drawn in holy fire that says, this vessel is sealed, no access. And if you've walked away from a burial space feeling heavier than when you arrived, you're not alone. You didn't just grieve, you absorbed. And now it's time to release it, to pray, to cleanse, to realign with life after standing too close to death's residue. Like this video if your spirit has ever known something was off before your mind could catch up. Share it with someone who doesn't realize that spiritual sensitivity is a gift, not a curse, a radar, not a reaction. You're not afraid of death, but you were never meant to dwell in its shadows. You were chosen to walk in life, to carry frequency that reminds the world, resurrection is real. Stay with me, because the next place, it looks beautiful on the surface, but it hides the most seductive traps of all. Chosen one, there's a certain kind of noise that doesn't come from volume, but from vibration, and you felt it. You step into the mall, the light's too bright, the screen's too loud, the smell's too artificial. You were just there to grab one thing, but suddenly your spirit starts pulling away. Your breath gets shallow, your mind fogs. You forget why you came. Because chosen one, your spirit is allergic to manipulation. And some buildings weren't built to serve your needs. They were built to sedate your frequency. That's why you feel anxious in those places. That's why your energy dips, even when your hands are empty. Because these environments aren't just retail, they're ritual. The layout, the sounds, the artificial urgency, all designed to dull discernment and hook attention. But you don't move by impulse. You move by alignment. And the moment your feet hit that tile, you can feel it. The spirits of excess, the thrones of false worth, the invisible pressure to buy your way into identity. But your identity isn't for sale. See, malls are more than marketplaces. They are mirrors, flashing back distorted versions of who you should be, what you should wear, how you should look, what you should crave. But chosen one, your cravings don't come from culture. They come from calling. And every time you tried to blend in, tried to enjoy the shopping trip, the fake lights, the music loop playing on repeat, your soul whispered, "I need silence, not sales." You weren't being dramatic. You were being delivered. Because not all warfare feels like battle. Some warfare feels like brain fog, like heart fatigue, like walking into a building and forgetting who you are. That's not coincidence. That's spiritual static, designed to interrupt your clarity, to drown out the still, small voice with 10,000 sale signs, to flood your senses until your discernment drowns. And while others are mesmerized by the lights, you're searching for the exit. You're drawn to the quiet corners, the back stairwells, any place that lets you breathe again. Because you weren't built to consume. You were built to consecrate. You weren't wired to binge. You were wired to bless. Chosen one, if you've ever walked into a shopping center and felt the need to retreat, reset, or just run, type, "I need silence, not sales." That's your frequency reset. Your declaration that you're no longer available to systems that silence the spirit for the sake of style. Like this video if you've felt the battle behind the brand names. Share it with someone who doesn't realize their anxiety is spiritual discernment in disguise. Because some buildings don't just sell products, they sell numbness. They sell masks for the soul. But you've already unmasked yourself. You've remembered who you are. Stay with me, chosen one. The next place, it looks holy. It sounds wise, but it drains the deepest part of you. Chosen one. You've been in the room, the one that shimmered with status, sparkled with beauty, pulsed with curated perfection. Everything was flawless. The outfits, the smiles, the lighting, the angles, but your spirit couldn't breathe. Because when image is everything, truth suffocates. It wasn't the chandeliers or the champagne. It was the emptiness beneath the glamour. It was the way everyone seemed to be posing for someone invisible, performing for a crowd of ghosts they called followers. And while others were intoxicated by the spotlight, you saw the shadows, tears hidden behind mascara, insecurity wrapped in designer, laughter that echoed with a silent ache. Because chosen one, you don't just see faces, you read frequencies. And when a space is built to worship appearance instead of authenticity, your soul starts shutting the door, quietly without apology. You've tried to stay before, tried to blend, tried to care about the conversations that circled endlessly around status and surface, but something inside you kept whispering, "This isn't holy ground. This is a hall of mirrors." And those mirrors, they don't reflect truth. They reflect illusion. They stretch the ego. They starve the soul. Because in temples of vanity, there is no room for vulnerability, no room for raw, no space for sacred tears or trembling prayers. Only masks, only edits, only highlight reels that hide the hemorrhaging. But you were never built to bow to trends. You were never meant to polish your light to please people blind to their own. You carry substance, you carry oil. And oil cannot be filtered for public approval. It stains, it seeps, it reveals. So you leave, even when the room is glittering, even when your absence is questioned, even when it costs you an invitation. Because you weren't called to be seen, you were called to be set apart. And if you've ever walked out of a place that looked luxurious but felt like a lie, comment, "I don't bow to appearances." That's your authenticity command, a spiritual line drawn in bold truth, declaring that your worth is not in how you're perceived, but in how you're anchored. Like this video if you've ever smiled in a room and still felt alone. Share it with someone who's starting to feel the ache behind the aesthetic. Because this world doesn't need more perfect. It needs more present, more real, more souls willing to rip off the mask and say, "This is me, all of me, and I'm still chosen." Stay with me, because the next place, It sounds like truth, but it twists your voice in silence. Chosen one, you've sat at the table. The food was hot, the laughter was loud, the photos were staged, but your spirit was shrinking. Because not every table is sacred. Some are spiritual battlegrounds, dressed up like celebrations. You knew it the moment you walked in. The tension in the air, the echoes of old wounds covered in polite conversation, the passive-aggressive glances, the weight that settled over your shoulders like a familiar ghost. Chosen one, you weren't imagining it. You weren't too sensitive. You were spiritually awake in a room where most were spiritually asleep. There are family gatherings where the blood is thicker than water, but the energy is darker than grief. Rooms where generational trauma lingers in the wallpaper, where the same arguments loop behind every fake smile, where the table was never built for truth, only tradition, and tradition doesn't always equal alignment. You've heard the same stories, seen the same dysfunction, felt the same judgment passed down like heirlooms. And every time you tried to show up fully, your light was dimmed, your voice dismissed, your calling misunderstood. Because when you carry the oil of generational breakthrough, you disrupt the flow of generational bondage. You don't just make people uncomfortable, you activate what they've buried. And what's buried doesn't always stay quiet. You've probably left those rooms more drained than restored, more confused than connected. Because you weren't sitting at a dinner table, you were sitting in a spiritual war zone. Unseen contracts, unhealed wounds, unspoken envy wrapped in celebration. But still, you showed up. You prayed before entering. You tried to smile. You tried to love. But your spirit kept saying, this is not your final family frequency. This is your training ground. And I need you to hear this. You are not the black sheep. You are the bloodline breaker. You are not the rebel. You are the reset. The one God called to interrupt cycles. Not because you're perfect, but because you're positioned to heal what they won't admit is broken. And if you've ever left a family room feeling heavier than a funeral, type "I break the pattern." That's not just a comment, it's a generational declaration, a sacred signal in the unseen and that says, the cycle stops with me. Like this video if you've ever had to retreat to your room just to breathe. Share it with someone who carries wounds from places that were supposed to be safe. You're not cursed, you're called to cleanse what others chose to normalize. You're not weak for needing boundaries, you're wise for building them. Because the truth is, some family trees are rooted in pain, and it takes a chosen one to grow new branches. Stay with me, because the final place you'll never go, it's not physical, it's spiritual, and it's the most dangerous territory of all. Chosen one, there's one more place, the final place you'll never return to. Not because you're scared of it, but because you survived it. It's the place where your soul once bled in silence, where you once chased relief that came wrapped in rebellion, where the enemy didn't need new chains, he just perfumed the old ones. You know the one, that bar, that bedroom, that back seat, that phone number you kept memorized even after deleting the contact, that corner of your city that used to own a piece of your mind. You weren't just sitting there. You were drowning there. But somehow God pulled you out. Not when you were ready, but when you were ruined. He didn't wait until you cleaned up. He interrupted the collapse. Right in the middle of the spiral, he whispered, "This isn't how your story ends." And ever since then, something shifted. You stopped craving what used to numb you. You stopped laughing at what once disguised your grief. You stopped returning to places that promised fun, but fed your flesh. But make no mistake, the enemy remembers where you used to kneel, and he'll decorate the pit, hoping you forget it was a grave. He'll paint over the prison and call it nostalgia. He'll perfume the pain and call it freedom. He'll use familiar faces, old habits, and warm invitations to reopen the portal. But you, chosen one, you've seen too much light to settle for darkness dressed in memories. That place might call you back, but your spirit doesn't resonate anymore. The music hits different. The energy feels off. You don't laugh like you used to. You don't flirt with demons you used to entertain, because your discernment has matured, and now you recognize manipulation in perfume. So yes, you may feel tempted. Yes, you may remember the thrill, but your soul remembers the price. And if you've ever stood outside the door of your past and heard the invitation to return, comment, I'm not going back. That's your final exit declaration. Not just a sentence, but a severing. A line drawn in spiritual fire that tells the enemy, you had me once. You'll never have me again. Like this video if you've ever walked away from a place that used to hold you captive. Share it with someone who needs to remember why they left the pit behind. Because freedom isn't just about leaving, it's about not returning, about letting the chain dissolve into gold light and choosing not to reach for it again. You didn't just escape, you evolved. You didn't just get out, you awakened. And now, you're not who you used to be. You're not even close. You carry divine codes. You walk in sacred clarity, and your presence shakes atmospheres the enemy thought he still owned. Stay out of the old rooms. Walk past the unlocked door. Let them call you different, because different is what saved your destiny. This was the final place, but your journey, it's just beginning. You're not going back, you're going forward on fire. Chosen one, let's talk about the final place you'll never go back to. Not because it's locked, but because your spirit remembers what it cost you. You know the place. The one with the low lights, the familiar smell, the voice that used to know just what to say. The bar that felt like home. The apartment that pulled you in like a trap. That street, that song, that moment frozen in memory like a portal. A portal to a version of you that no longer exists. You see, the enemy doesn't need new chains. He just perfumes the old ones. He'll dress it up differently. He'll repaint the pain. He'll remix the soundtrack and call it a comeback. But you, chosen one, you've evolved. You don't fall for recycled bondage. Not anymore. Because those weren't just places you visited. They were altars where you once sacrificed your peace. You gave too much, lost too much, and what you thought was freedom was warfare with glitter on top. But God interrupted the cycle. He didn't wait for you to clean up. He stepped into the mess, mid-fall, mid-text, mid-spiral, and whispered, "Come out, I have more for you." And from that moment on, something sacred began. You started seeing clearly. You started hearing that still, small voice in places that used to drown it out. The light got louder, the fake got heavier, and what used to tempt you started to trouble you. That's when you knew you were changing. See, healing doesn't just feel like joy. Sometimes it feels like disgust at what you used to entertain. Sometimes it feels like grief for the version of you that tolerated toxicity. And yet, in that grief, there's glory. Because the fact that you don't belong there anymore, that's proof. Proof you've grown. Proof you've been marked. Proof you've stepped into alignment and your old chains no longer fit your current frequency. But hear me, temptation doesn't knock with a red flag. It comes cloaked in memory, in comfort, in just one more time. And that's why this moment matters. If you've ever stood on the edge of your old ways, if you've ever felt the pull to revisit places that once nearly destroyed your destiny, comment, "I'm not going back." That's your final exit declaration. Not just a comment, but a covenant. A divine refusal to revisit the vomit, a spiritual block on the doors that once welcomed your destruction. Like this video if you've ever had to walk away from something your flesh still remembered, but your spirit no longer resonated with. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded. What they walked out of is nothing compared to what they're walking into. Because when chains dissolve, they don't vanish into nothing. They transform into testimony, into authority, into golden light that reminds hell, "You tried, but I got out." So keep walking, keep glowing, keep guarding your frequency, because what's behind you is finished, and what's ahead is fire-forged and holy. This is your final portal closure, and it's sealed in discernment, in destiny, in divine timing. You're not going back. You're going forward, on purpose, on fire, unstoppable.